So many thanks for joining today's session, guys. It's a pleasure to have you all with us for the next hour or so, just to run through the StorM tool. So what I'll do, I'll quickly go through a couple of slides of where we're at. But before I go through those slides, I'd just like to throw in a couple of adverts, a bit like a YouTube video we do at the beginning, of just a few things that I see of note, because I view you guys, because you've registered on this call, as our technical community for storage. Couple of things you need to be aware of at the moment that IBM very much so are pushing. It's not so much a product, but it's actually free consultancy. So they're currently offering a couple of elements that are, for me, really interesting and a bit of a no-brainer for anybody who hasn't seen them. The first one is cyber resilience assessment. So IBM can do an assessment to see how your storage is performing with resilience. This is simple. It's really easy to kind of kick off. You basically fill in a form and then we'll start to engage with you. The one here on the right of the screen is the Spectrum Protect Fire Drill Incentive, which is largely known as CSA, Client Storage Assessment. So it's basically for any customer that has a Spectrum Protect or Spectrum Protect Plus or TSM of old, basically a health check. It's absolutely free. Can I mention it's free? It's free. It's kind of worth looking at. So if you have one of those environments, I'd really expect you to kind of look at this offer. And if it does lead to a sale of 10,000 euros or more, you'll get an Amazon voucher worth 250 euros. So this is kind of my tip to you as a tech community. Get ahead of the sales guys and see if we can pocket that 250 euros for yourself on Amazon. Okay, and there's a link there. I'll show the slides at the end of the session. And I'd love to be able to set up a one-to-one with each one of you to make sure that we're making maximum opportunity those particular free offers, because they're not like a product offer, it's an actual consultancy, which is all good in my opinion. Aside from that, we have an extended offer from IBM, which is called Storage Infrastructure Optimization Studies. So these aren't as free as the previous two offers, but they can be. They can be because you can use your vouchers that you have of business partners. Usually, quite often, you use your vouchers for training, but given the fact there is oodles amounts of training online at the moment for IBM, this might be a better way to go to spend those vouchers if that's the way to do it. So with this, it's much more extensive to your customer. This is more of a week-long sort of assessment with lab services. And again, I'd certainly love to have a conversation with you and around your customers to see if this is any real interest to you. So those are my two adverts for today. I'll quickly move on to what we're supposed to be doing. So today, we're all about the Storage Modeller. So the Storage Modeller is the modern version of Disk Magic and Capacity Magic of old. So Capacity Magic is currently being sunset. And Disk Magic is currently being worked upon. So the idea is to put these all within one tool so you can actually utilize it. But it's not just about being able to do the capacity and the performance sizing. It's a storage tool suite, which leads me to my next slide. So this is the full sales cycle vision for the IBM toolset. So as you can see here, we've got a storage model in the top right. We also have Impact. Impact is, if you're not aware, is for doing the solutions assurance. So you'll see integration from Storage Modeller into Impact. And then of course we've got at the bottom right, eConfig to actually produce our configurations and our pricing. And then on the left-hand side, we've got, I suppose, I see it as a discovery phase, which is storage insights and information such as we could also do TCO now. And those will eventually look to feed into Storage Modeller for you to build those models. We will then go around the wheel back into eConfig for pricing. So that is what IBM are looking to do with this particular tool. And that will be quite powerful. Are we at that point now? I hear you ask. No, we're not. But you can see actually signs of it starting to work and starting to come together. So this is kind of what you need to be aware of. It will actually start to change the way we actually create some of these solutions, because it will make it hopefully a little bit easier, because everything will be in the right place, rather than having to update multiple tools. Say previously you had to update Capacity Magic or Disk Magic or eConfig all at the same time, and make sure they're all in sync and make sure it all works quite smoothly. So over here, with it all being online and all being integrated into each other, that should make that easier. So this is kind of a bit of a sneak preview of what's coming. This is pretty new to Storage Modeller. It's all about the workflow, rather than just to say these particular items are sizing. It is actually to kind of get from the high entry level requirements to the actual process for review for order. So here we're kind of looking at the middle elements here around in developing the solution and making sure that we get the sizing. But it's essentially as part of the whole pre-sales process for you to actually order your storage and to make sure that you've got the right elements all ticked and done what you needed to do to get that through. Okay, and these are just I've got two kind of simply slides coming up saying what are the user improvements. It's kind of fairly obvious, really, similar to sort of session that we did a couple of weeks ago around eConfig Cloud. Of course, it's cross-platform, integrated sizing with one tool rather than multiple tools, because you'd often find that Disk Magic might not be in sync with Capacity Magic, and it might not be in sync with eConfig. So here, this makes it much simpler to do so, and it makes IBM to be able to update it more accurately and to fix any mistakes as they go along. One of the good things about it, the visual design element, again, I will show you that. It is in development at the moment. It will get better. One of the neat functions that I quite liked about it, which is coming on just a little bit into the tool, is the geographic maps. So basically, you'll be able to actually draw out your 2 sites or 3 sites or however many sites you have, and actually be able to have a complete diagram picture of your whole solution, which for me is pretty good, and it makes you look very good as a technical pre-sales or delivery person. And for me, I'm all for that. Also, it's stored online by IBM, so you don't have to keep it on your desktop, so you can't lose it. You can have all sorts of systems per project, different combinations. One of the interesting things which I talk about about changing the way we do things, the peer expert approval workflow. This is where it kind of gets more, we'll be able to collaborate more. And this, for me, is one of the key things that IBM are really starting to deliver on. Across the piece, you'll notice that we can share on eConfig Cloud, we can share on StorM. We're going to be able to share and be able to do those reviews with you, or with IBM, or with your peers. And it makes it much better, much simpler to do so, because we'll all be looking at the same configuration, at the same file, rather than finding that we have projects with multiple files, and usually we spend half the session of deciding which actual config file we're supposed to be looking at in the first place. So it makes it much easier to do that. So, and again, you can see like the integration with other sales tools and what they're looking to do. I say eConfig is probably one of the main ones for me, and Impact for me. It'll be interesting to see how they go about the integration with Storage Insights. That will be a big thing moving forward, but I haven't seen any sign of that as yet. Right, so a couple of items on the design benefits. So obviously it's online, kind of mentioned that. We're sunsetting the legacy tools. IntelliMagic is the company who writes the Disk Magic and Capacity Magic tools. FOSDI is used for ESS. That is also going to be integrated into tools. I did have a partner ask me a week or 2 ago if we were going to run a session on FOSDI. Quite possibly, we could do it if that's of interest to anybody. But essentially, eventually, this will actually be integrated into this tool. So it'll all be in one place and easy to do. So again, it depends on your customer set and whether you actually offer those types of solutions. But I suppose a bit like eConfig, you'll have full visibility, everything all at once, and being able to see that. What else have we got in there? So we'll be able to do much more overlaying of sizing, design delivery, because we'll be able to, conjunction with the IBM product teams, we'll be able to share it with your friendly IBM SME, and be able to make sure that we can get that collaboration right. And the interesting bit on the bottom right is that IBM will bring machine learning on mining of the technical designs, not to kind of see how you're doing and give you a score out of 10. It's nothing to be afraid of from that point of view, but it's actually to see what kind of designs they're seeing more and more of. And that'll kind of actually give them an opinion of how people are sizing stuff and what they're expecting of sizes. And it'll give them more feedback, whereas at the moment, they're just on standalone tools. So they would never have feedback of how you're actually sizing anything. So say if you're a partner who specializes in System I, you might have particular requirements. The only way to get those requirements through will actually be to feed it back to us, and you'll find that the tool might just be bent and be sorted to allow that to happen for you. So this is the roadmap we're at the moment. So this has changed a little because of COVID-19, I'm afraid. So we have seen I suppose a little bit of a slowdown, but essentially we're kind of in the same sort of place we were. When IBM says support, it means minimal viable product, in that it's an actual start. So when it says support for example, performance modeling, you might find that the performance modeling isn't quite as granular as you would expect in Disk Magic, but you'll find that as we go along, more function is added. If you are after a particular functional feature, just let us know. We can see if we can find out where that is in the roadmap. Well, essentially, where they're up to at the moment, they've done performance support on most of the flash systems. They're bringing in the older systems. The next up, as far as I'm aware, they recently just did the DS8Ks for capacity. They will then be doing the DS8Ks for performance too. Okay, and here's a little bit about the architecture, a little bit of what we're kind of expecting to see. At the moment, I would say the performance modeling is reasonably basic at the moment, but you can see that in this architecture, the way they're looking to expand it along will actually make it more accessible and more interesting as we go through. And to be fair, with it being a web-based tool, it's probably a little bit easier to use once you get used to it, because Disk Magic was not the most friendly tool in the world, and I think we can probably all agree on that. The model improvement, we've got full IBM I support coming up. As I say, I kind of mentioned a bit about DS8K enhancements, and we've got data ingest coming up, which for me is one of the most important things. At the moment, it's kind of really quite, I suppose, a basic sizing, but again, we'll expect that to be increased as we go along. Okay, and to the bottom, we've kind of got solutions recommendation coming up, which has started to actually show in some of the tools around cloud object storage, not so much on virtualize at the moment, but it has actually made an appearance in the tool, and maybe we'll see more of that as we go along. So what I'll do, I'll look to actually bring up Storage Modeller. Just bear with me. Bear with me for a moment. What happens when you have too many screens open at the same time? Okay, so before I kick off with this, I'd just like to, strangely enough, just point out something about the Zoom. We have a chat facility on Zoom, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to add those into that chat facility. That is probably the best way to capture any of your questions. So I'll just put that hello in there so everybody can see that. So my first question to you before I dive into this is, have you guys used StorM before? Yes or no? Okay. Got a couple of yeses, some no's, a few times. So kind of a mix, really. Okay, Russ, I hope it's a yes. Great stuff. And have you used disk and capacity magic? Yes. Okay. Too many times, yes. Without much success. Yes, I can understand that. So yeah, cool. So we've got a lot of people basically quite experienced on disk magic and capacity magic, which is good, but it might make it slightly difficult for you in some respects. Let me just log in. And straight away, just bear with me. Let me go back. There we go. Thank you. That's because I logged into it earlier and I was sat in it and I didn't do anything with it, by the way. So here is your all projects that you have. This is kind of what you get on your way in. This is kind of what you'll see most of the time as you roll through. Interestingly, where I said about the workflow has actually started to appear on the top tab. So this isn't actually fully, I suppose, fully aligned with what we're doing at the moment, but you can see that basically we're creating projects that we can design, and then as we go along, we can submit and review and approve and then archive. This is very much so a new area of the tool that I kind of just wanted to show you to highlight it, to show you where we're going. So if you think back to the wheel that we had previously, this is how we're actually going to start to do that. So if I go up to my projects, so there's quite a lot of info within the tool. And if you ever get lost within the tool, the best way to do it is just click the top left and you go straight back. One of the first elements I always go to is make sure how you can get support and how you can view any important messages that IBM might be pushing to you. So there's a lot of good information in the messages section around the support of where we're up to. You can see that, as I mentioned, coming later in May, we got the some of the older flash systems. We've got all the training links. There's hours of training there for you to watch if you wish to do so. And other elements of interest for me is the bug fixes. So you can actually see some of the elements that they've changed and some of the elements that are going to change as well. For example, only recently they've had added different ways of reporting your terabytes and TIB. So it kind of gets more advanced as we go along. So if I go into create a new project, we can add descriptions to whatever you want, and you can add as many tags as you want, and it makes it easy to search. So if you're running, say I have to run a lot of sizings and capacities for partners, as does our technical team. So we might find that we tag you as the actual partner, or say if you've got an end user that you're using it, it just makes it much easier to find. And you start to actually build your project. So it's really quite an easy way to actually start to add the systems to it. So here at the moment, we've got Spectrum Virtualized, we've got DS8K and cloud storage. You can see if I was looking to do a 7200, they all start to appear up and it makes quite easy to do. We can also select the site. If you've done a site in it, you can actually define it from there. So if I actually go back, so you have all these tabs across the top. And you can actually do canvas. And this is where it actually shows you of how it looks out. So you can actually start to create a site. So if I add a site, now you can see where I'm from. I type it carefully. Clearly today it's having a good day. But anyway, you can basically add in your sites as you go along, and you can add your hosts in, and then you can start to map your actual system to that. But for what most people tend to use it for is just to add the systems itself. So if I look to add the 7200, and again, it's quite familiar to anybody using this. It's not too difficult at this particular stage. The element that I tend to go to straight to capacity. So again, you can do it by pool, you can do it by data reduction pool. It will calculate it pretty accurately, I would say. If you do a comparison to this between Capacity Magic, I would use the figures in StorM rather than Capacity Magic, because StorM enables IBM to use better calculation methods to actually bring out that within the tool. Whereas with it being a desktop tool, they're only be able to take it so far. Whereas with this, they're actually be able to drive it more accurately, and be able to do that. So I'm just going to do a simple system here. I'm not going to do all SCMs. We'll just do straight that. So straight away, we've got a system, quite easy to see. You can see our effective capacity, our usable capacity. Obviously, if you adjust your data reduction, it'll adjust the effective, as you'd expect. So we can see the binary. Again, we can print out reports on that. And you can see all the info you'd expect. So it's kind of reasonably easy to use from that respect. And again, you can add in your adapters. So it's quite a simple tool to use from a capacity manner. So you can see in my project, I've got a system, and I basically can keep adding systems. So we've got whatever we want. So if I do a quick one. Cool. And the thing is, you'll notice with the tool, you don't have to save it. It does actually do it as you go along. So you see systems. And you can see because I have only done one site there, it puts a default site. But you can see that actually we could start to expand this and actually make it a little bit more interesting when we add the hosts on. So if my colleague Jake is on the call, would you like to do a bit around performance?
Yeah, absolutely. Do I just need to share my screen?
So I will unshare. And if you could share, that would be great.
Okay, is mine showing up now, Mike?
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah.
So I created a bit of a base template to do a quick performance on earlier. So I've just created a 5100, gone through the fiber channel adapters, created in the same way that you would do the capacity anywhere. And for simplicity's sake, I've used just NVMe drives in a regular pool to start with. So once we've got the capacity set up, we come into systems and then performance. So you'll immediately see it looking quite a lot simpler than Disk Magic did if you have any sort of experience with that tool. So we start, we're going to create a workload. So we'll just give it a quick dummy name. You need to add a host to be able to do this. One thing that will crop up is just making sure that you've got the same interface protocol as you've set up on your box. So if you've set up Fiber Channel, make sure that your host is also Fiber Channel, of course. At the moment, only Open Systems is on there, no System I, no System Z, anything like that. So I believe those will be to come later, but at the moment it's only open systems. Once we've created our host, we need to select the storage system. So we could have created more than one system at the start, but for simplicity, we've just created the one, and choose the pool of storage. So automatically, only one host is supported at the moment. It will assign the entire capacity to that singular host. If we had a data reduction pool, we could ask either do fully allocated or a reduced volume, and we select if there's any replication going on as well. So to the actual workload profile itself, you've got a little slide at the top here for your read-write percentage. So if we take a fairly typical 70-30% split, we will put in a base number of IOPS. It's not too important at this stage what you pick, just something conservative that the system should be able to do, and the transfer sizes. So if we take a fairly typical 4K block on both read and write, and a fairly conservative cache hit percentage of 45%. So as you can tell, if you've used Dismagic, this is a lot simpler. The only thing that we don't have at the moment, which you can see grayed out here, is a workload source. So on Dismagic, you had a number of ways to import data from real life environments to be able to get that workload profile in there accurately. It's not there in the tool at the moment. So the information that you're going to put in, you're going to have to do yourself. Obviously, the more accurate you can get it, the better that's going to be. The same as any tool, really. Calculator just helps you rationalize what you've put in. So if we've got 1,000 IOPS in, 700 of those. Our reads, for example, just check those numbers, make sure they all look good. And save and solve. So that's going to take us to a report page with an Excel doc. So here you've got, for differing IO rates, all the different utilizations for each individual part of the system. So from the processor, the bus, the drives, all the way down to the host adapters. And as you scroll along, with the increasing IO, you're going to see which area is becoming the bottleneck as time goes on. So starts like it's going to be the processor, but quickly you can see it's the drives that are reaching the high percentage first. Once we've hit 60%, we get a yellow warning, which is the amber utilization level. And then up from that, past 80%, into the red, up to the point that we get to 100. So we can see theoretically with the workload we've got there, 144,000 IOPS should be attainable, with the drives being the case that's the point that's hitting its utilization limit before anything else does, although the processor is getting up there. The second tab across the bottom will give us the graph that I guess we're used to seeing from Dismagic, which is the service time against the IO level. So with that, we can see theoretically what we should be getting. Quite nice and simple way of doing it compared to Dismagic. But it might be that we've done that as a traditional pool with no data reduction. So we might want to see if we can hit an acceptable performance level whilst factoring in 2-to-1 compression, for example. So if we wanted to do that, we could go back to systems, edit our system, go onto the capacity and change the pool type here from regular to data reduction, factoring in 50% compression. So this is going to automatically change the storage footprint that's put in there and take it down to the requirement of 100 terabytes effective. So we've now got a physical usable of 55. So it might be that we're thinking we've got a performance figure to hit and a capacity figure to hit, but we want to know, factoring in compression, will we be able to hit that as well as we could using native storage? So if we go back into performance, you'll see that the status of this is now stale. So what that means is the tool's detected that you've made a change to the storage, and as such, it now won't let you proceed without changing a couple of things. So in this case, it's lowered the usable storage a little bit. So that's a red warning that we're going to have to change. If the storage was still the same, or if you had more than before, that wouldn't be a warning, but the tool would still make you change something in the workload, perhaps. So you could just change it from 1000 to even 1001 IOPS, just to make the tool aware that you realize things have changed and you've taken that on board. And click on Save and Solve again, and we'll get taken back to the same screen from before. So now we've added data reduction pools. We can see that we've actually hit, because we've lowered the number of drives to hit the capacity, we've got a different theoretical performance level that we can hit. So if you had 100 terabytes and you needed 100,000 IOPS, for example, this would be no good using the 2-to-1 compression. You would have to use the previous model. But if you only need 70,000 IOPS, for example, this quite nicely demonstrates that you can safely use a lower number of drives and still hit the performance level you were after. And again, just a graph to show that. Anything else that you think would like to see, Mike?
No, that's brilliant. Are there any questions on the call? If there is, you can either look to unmute yourself or put them in the chat. I mean, as we kind of say, it's kind of at this point, it's kind of a reasonably basic tool to do simple sizings in it. What do the replication options do with the sizing? Are you able to bring up the replication?
Yep, absolutely. So if we go back into our performance model, so adding replication is essentially just going to add extra load on the CPU and on the drives for that workload going. So if I pick Metro Mirror, which is obviously a synchronous replication method, you should just see when we go on the utilizations. I don't have them up side by side, obviously. But the processor will be a little bit higher, as should be the host adapters that are serving that replication workload. So if you do have replication in the environment, just make sure to get those ticks, just so that we can see, obviously. So you can see now that the processor is now into a red warning once you get to the top, whereas previously it wasn't. So it's just modeling that extra workflow that the system's going to have to do on top of serving data to its primary source.
Brilliant. Glad, does that answer your question?
Previously on this Magic, you could say that, it's a little bit more granular. You could say what percentage of the workload and the volumes and things are being replicated. It's not quite as robust as that at the moment on here. Can
we select FC or IP for the replication?
On this tool, no, you can't. It's just,
I don't think you can, but if you go into the adapters, you can select, obviously, for your host, but not for the replication.
Correct, yeah.
What else we got on there? Go MGTV, no impact, not a coincidence. Sorry, Ben, I'm not sure if you understand that. Is that a question? Is this initial web front end for this Magic? No, it's not. it's not. It's a completely different set of code. It's a completely different tool. Will it match the details disk magic? Yes, they're increasing it as we're going along. So we're going to see more additions as we go through. It's a completely, because basically IBM didn't own that particular right. It was a third party who wrote it for them, whereas this is actually IBM are actually doing this. I agree with Ben. Has an impact on CPU and storage. Yeah.
Mike.
Sure.
It's Mark Biggs here. So,
hi, Mark.
with regards to global mirror, whether it's metro mirror or global mirror with change volumes, having an impact on the storage and the CPU will depend on whether it's a heavy write workload. So, if Jake was to change it down to 50-50 or even more write prominent, you would probably see a bigger example of the CPU and storage impact. But yeah, it will have an impact, but it really does depend on the environment that the customer has.
Okay.
I hope that answers their questions.
Yeah, I think that's what he's getting at. I was trying to read two things at the same time. That's fine. Cool. But yeah, it is very similar to disk magic, the way the outputs come out. You're right. Is it probably nominal, still data collection and transmit? And we fudge it and rewrite ratio them. Yes, Ben, unfortunately, there's lots of fudging until we can get. It is what it is at the moment, I would say. It's quite a, you can see you can only input so many items into it, and it depends on how you go about doing that. Until we can get to the point of actually being able to put workload details in, that's when it gets really interesting. Cool. One of the other things I didn't really mention too much in what I was showing is that there is actually a solutions assurance tab on there. If I just open up my screen, I can find it. And that is actually linking solutions assurance all within the one area. So you can see that actually it's starting to integrate with Impact. Are they retiring disk magic then? They will be planning to do so at some point when it's up to scratch, but we don't have a date on that as yet. Capacity magic, as we're aware, is still going to be carrying on as in respect that you can actually access the tool, but it will not be updated for any of the new systems. So I think that's been the same since January. Yes, well, Ben, I think we're probably going to see more impact and more stuff around Systemize as probably we go on for the next couple of months. I will ask them to see if we can get any details around that, because I appreciate that Systemize is quite particular, let's say. But yeah, you can see that I think in the slide deck that I had at the beginning, they were on about doing about application. Will they be able to do it by multiple LPARs at some point? Quite possibly and theoretically. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. I'll see if I can get any info around what they're going to do with System I and where they're up to with that.
So Mike, quickly in terms of capacity and disk magic,
yep,
you shouldn't be able to access them anymore. So the current, well, the last version has now expired. So and without an update, so they're not accessible, at least for myself. I'm not sure about anyone else, but
I should imagine most people just have them on the desktop. So yeah, I think you can still certainly use disk magic, but capacity magic, it's been a while since I've used that, to be fair, because it's easier just to use it in StorM. Cool. Right, do we have? Do we have any more questions? We'll either see if we can get the answer out of IBM development, to see if there's a particular feature or function that you wish to see. Yeah, disk magic working here. Yeah, yeah. So imagine most of the partners are using disk magic at the moment still. I mean, I suppose that's another interesting point, Jake. Are you generally using disk magic or StorM at the moment? I get the feeling you're probably using disk magic more than StorM.
Where I can, I would use that. Typically, I'm trying to use StorM more, just for results sort of been ratified by IBM. As you say, with the version being expired, they're not really supporting anything that comes out of it. So trying to stick with the current tool where possible, although can be frustrating, obviously missing features that you're used to.
Brilliant. Okay, good. Yeah, Chris, yeah, I get your point. Replication and IBM I functionality in StorM. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, great. I don't think I have anything else to add, unless any of the team has anything else to add, either Mr. Biggs or Jake. From your point of view, I think we've kind of covered most of what we can show at the moment. But I would say it's a case of keep your eyes peeled on the tool, and we will keep you up to date as soon as we go. Any other feature like some indication of potential IO throughput of PCF FUD from HP, Dell EMC, etc. Yeah, well, it's always difficult with made up numbers from other vendors, let's say, especially one beginning with P. So all I would say is that on the storage front, on the Spectrum virtualized systems and the flash systems, we can still do proof of concepts that IBM, you can ship it to site for 2 weeks to evaluate it, whether that's helpful for that. But yeah, it is difficult to kind of gauge theoretical numbers that somebody just pulled out of a hat. But maybe the best way to do it is actually try and get the real kit and get them to actually get it through the door. But I appreciate that's not always particularly straightforward. Cool. And on that note, I'm pretty happy to wrap up here. We're about 15 minutes early from where I expected us to be. But what we'll do is we'll collect those questions together. And I think last time I also produced a Q&A of what we had within the session. So I'll then send that out to you. Again, I'll see if I can make sure that we're up to date with the development teams of we're up to on the tool. And maybe if we do see a big significant rollout across, say, like System I or a particular system, we'll come to you and see if that's of relevance to you to have a run through and see how we go. Okay? So I'll leave you there. If that's okay, everybody. Have a great afternoon. And thanks for your time. Cheers, Jake. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody.